We've got a few minutes for questions. I want to make sure we get to those, but I want to just walk through real quick so I understand. I want to simplify it for myself. So you've got teenagers that are starting to use. You recognize that you found some pot in their room, something like that. One is you need to make sure that you're educated on what's happening. You need to make sure that you're caring and authoritative, but also authoritative. Was it authoritative? Authoritative is the right word. That you're addressing these issues, that you're setting clear expectations, that this is not acceptable. You need to get both parents on board. That's important, that we're not dividing the family, that we're addressing this. And I think most importantly, that you're helping these young people have a sense of purpose. Like, well, I've got 4 young children, and I talk to them all the time, that God created you for something. You are here for a reason to do something really important. And this that you're getting into, this is a web of entanglement that's going to stop you from your full potential. Amen. Is that a good step when we're dealing with young people, Ken?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things you hit on there too is all those future opportunities and what's out there that you're passionate about and what plans you have and the goals that you set. All of those things are huge protective factors that if we can help our young people keep those ends in mind, and the fact that use of these various substances get in the way of that opportunity. And Dr. Thurstone described, and the more you do it, the bigger the risks and the more consequences that may come from it. And so if we can keep those things in mind, absolutely, I think that's the right way to approach it.
Great. Now with adults. So we've got a coworker, we've got a cousin, family member, brother, spouse that's struggling with these issues. Number one, we've got to make sure we're not enabling them, right? We're not continuing to allow them. We've got to set clear expectations for their lives as well. That this is not acceptable. You're my brother, or you're my sister, or you're my spouse. We can't have you doing that. We can't be in an enabling mode where we're continuing to fund or give excuses or other opportunities that allow them to continue to do that. We've got to let them get to a place where they're humble enough to admit, and I think that was one of the first ones, that they're honest enough. I think, Peter, you brought this up in the 12-step program, that they're honest enough or humbled enough, they've hit that point where they need help. Because if we try to engage prior to that, Paul, I think this is what you were saying. They're gonna give you a million different excuses, and they're not at a position where they really need that help if they're putting conditions on it, right? They really need to be at a place where they are at rock bottom, right? At that point, if they're ready, if they're finally at that point, then we get into a 30 to 90-day treatment program with a long-term sober living accountability program. Is that kind of how we do that? And how do they find information on that? How do we help our folks here know where a good 30 to 90-day program is, or a long-term accountability program?
Well, there's this cool new thing. It's called the internet. And no, I'm sorry. That was. There are many resources on the internet. My recommendation is to call several different places, figure out what their recovery structure is, what their payment structure is, and just do some research on the organization itself. You can also reach out to other professionals that refer and work closely in conjunction with those treatment centers. The challenge is, and you said it well, Jeff, how do we find a good one, right? Because there are so many today, and many of them are in that for-profit zone that are looking to make money. I would start with nonprofit treatment centers, ones that are usually associated with a hospital or some other reputable organization like Betty Ford, Hazelden, if they have that sort of connection. Dr. Thurstone, how would you go about referring a client to a particular treatment center that you think is appropriate for that individual?
Yeah, I think I agree. I would give them a list of names, menu of options, ask them to call, and then make big decisions with their heart, right? And see which one has the best vibe for them.
Another way would be find other people that are in recovery. You can, usually if you go to peer recovery support groups, people are going to be willing to direct you to a good treatment environment. If you all go to your own support groups, whether that be Al-Anon or something similar, other folks there will be able to direct you as to where they sent their loved ones. It's a pretty well-knit community if you just dip your toe into it.
As a parent, it terrifies me, the idea of letting my child walk out without any support and knowing what they're going to face on that street. I mean, they're going to be used and abused and ripped to shreds. How do you get past that? Or do you? I'm struggling with that. How do you do that as a parent?
You don't ever get past it.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? With the accountability piece, it has to come with love and compassion. You can't just be like, get out, you suck, or excuse my language, whatever that looks like. It has to be with love and compassion, and you have to know that ultimately you're doing the right thing, right? You have to know that in your heart, and that's why we seek support, so that others can tell us, that share with us their experience and how their loved ones have come back around and been okay. Secondarily, we have to have faith, right? We have to have faith that God or the universe or whatever it is you might believe in is going to do the right thing for our families. We also have to accept the fact that the sooner this happens, the sooner they may get to recovery. And the longer I stretch it out, the worse it's going to be for them. The final thing to remember is people that suffer from the disease of addiction are extremely resourceful. We find a way to survive, right? And we always hear about the overdose deaths and the drunk driving accident because we're a dirty laundry society. We want to hear about the bad, right? What you don't hear about is the millions of people that get into recovery. The millions of people, or let's just even say it's thousands, the thousands of people that come back to their family restored and healthy. That's not an exciting, dramatic story. You rarely hear that story. So more often than not, the case is going to be that the individual finds recovery, comes back, and restores a healthy family dynamic. But more often, you're going to hear about the overdose because that makes news.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's one book I wanted to leave you with too. Get Your Loved Ones Sober, Alternatives to Nagging, Pleading, and Threatening. So get your loved ones sober, alternatives to nagging, pleading, and threatening. So one thing we shouldn't do is nag, plead, and threaten, right? That just doesn't help. That makes you want to drink more, right, to escape that. And it's by Myers. And the two basic premises: improve your own life, and number two, make sobriety more appealing than using. Right?
And when you point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, it's a key point because why would you want to stop if you're facing the nagging, pleading, threatening, and it makes, you want to have something better to look forward to. And I think also, Paul, did you mention Celebrate Recovery?
I did not, and thank you for mentioning that. Celebrate Recovery is an amazing Christian 12-step program that it has phenomenal results. Thank you, Christian. I appreciate that.
Great. Questions? We have microphones, so wait. We've got a lot of people watching online, so wait till you get a microphone. We'll start over here with the hat. Hold on real quick, and we'll give you a microphone.
Yeah, my name is Jennifer. My husband is a recovering addict. He started his meth addiction when he was 11, early 80s. And I was that person, as Paul said, that didn't understand and told him, just stop. It shouldn't be that hard, just stop. And then eventually I was able to give him a little bit of tough love and kick him out. and say, you have to hit bottom. I can't do this anymore. And in the process, I found with myself that I was able to seek help for myself, and in return, it helped him as well. He is almost done with a 2-year recovery program at a nonprofit, Stout Street, here in Denver. And I think getting help for us is important as well. Amy and I are currently running the only Smart Recovery family meetings in Denver at Cedar. So we also have cards for that if you'd like to attend those meetings. My question is, what are any of your opinions on codependency?
Great question, thank you.
That's a great question.
You want to start?
I was going to kick it to the doctor.
Okay.
No, I was gonna kick it to you, Paul.
This is codependency. Does that, codependency is part of that personal disease that someone else has, that need to be needed, that need to be valued, that need to feel as though there is a mission in their life. And oftentimes the individual that's suffering becomes my mission, right? And if I can just fix you, I'm going to fix me. And we are going to live happily ever after. And I think that's what the book said we should do, right? So that's a very rudimentary explanation, and I'm sure Christian will give us a better one.
And there's codependency. Does anybody here have experience with Codependency Anonymous or any of those groups? No?
Yeah. Oh, you do? No. Where's our microphone?
All right, any, yes, go ahead. Hold on for the microphone real quick.
I'm one of those boring people. I've been sober for 36 years. And what you're all clapping for me saving my own ass. Excuse me. I have 2 questions or comments. Firstly, nothing was mentioned about the fake marijuana, like Mr. Nice Guy's Spice. It's cheap, but it's more dangerous than pot. So if you got a kid that says, oh, this is fake marijuana, it's good. Don't believe it. It can kill them faster than pot can. Wow. Number 2, suppose one cannot afford a 30-day program. They're pretty expensive. What do we do? I knew what I did, but perhaps you have a suggestion. And then, okay, trying to think my third point. That's it.
I'll just comment on the K2 spice and synthetic marijuana. And Dr. Thurstone, I don't know if you've done any research on that too, but yeah, those products often are sprayed with chemicals. You have no idea what's in them, and so yeah, there's a lot of, and you've seen some spikes of overdoses that take place, and everybody using that same product. So yes, they are absolutely ones that one would want to stay away from. We haven't brought up any comments about vaping tonight either, and that as a potential pathway for use of nicotine products and other substances, which is absolutely a serious issue. That's, I think, overtaken in many ways some of the K2 and spice concerns that we've had that has become better managed by law enforcement. They were a little behind, but then caught up with it. But the vaping piece, we are still trying to figure out how to deal with, and that one, I think the data point out of the Healthy Kids Survey was 1 in 3 high school students had used a vaping product, an electronic cigarette or a Juul or what have you, and could be a variety of things in it. And honestly, we don't know much about the risks that come with it yet. There's not enough research out there. The only thing we do know is that there are some surveys out there that say that it is a better way to consume nicotine than a combustible cigarette for those that are smoking. That doesn't mean that it's, the problem is that it's getting other people into smoking and using the, whether it's nicotine or other products. So while it may help those that are trying to quit smoking, it is introducing a whole new set of folks into this world.
I wanted to just point out the importance of civil society, the family, faith-based organizations, and nonprofit organizations in addressing these issues. You mentioned how expensive these for-profit recovery programs are, and they are. But for this organization and what Colorado Christian University stands for, we all know that the family is the number one the number one support group that's going to help anyone through any of these incredibly difficult challenges. Our faith-based organizations, if you get down into what used to be called Skid Row in Denver, right in the heart of it is Step Denver that Paul runs here, but there's also the Denver Rescue Mission. Now, that generally is an immediate shelter, but the Denver Rescue Mission also runs a Crossroads Center, which for those folks who get into it, offers a terrific recovery program, very high standards, and it is a great organization. Sadly, though, the Salvation Army, which also operated an incredibly effective program, had to close that down because they simply couldn't make it work financially. That's a real loss for our community. And Arapahoe House also is a detox center in Denver that really almost every recovery program would use. Unfortunately, they had to shut down. So in the midst of these incredible challenges, as Jeff pointed out, the rising level of deaths from opioid addiction, for some reason, these organizations are not getting the support that they need. But it really is important. If you get down into those neighborhoods, it's Samaritan House, Step 13, the Rescue Mission, it's St. Francis Center. It's all these faith-based organizations that are really on the front lines taking care of this work.
And do you guys know if there's Medicaid or Medicare coverage on some of these? Paul, you're shaking your head. You're nodding your head. Is there some?
That's a great question, Toby, and thank you very much, because many, many people cannot afford treatment. Many folks go into the detox, they come out of detox, and they walk right into the 12-step rooms. That's primarily the way it used to be, wasn't it? Nowadays, many people find that a bit challenging because of the increased exposure to drugs and alcohol that our society has, right? Not that alcohol wasn't readily available everywhere, but marijuana, prescription pills, as Kent brought up vaping. Vaping has become the number one delivery system for smoking pot now. Many people are vaping because it's healthier for me, right? And I still get high. But there are a number of programs that will take Medicaid or some other form of insurance. There are a number of them in which you can get scholarships for them. There are a number of foundations and other organizations that will give grants to individuals. That process, takes a little bit of time. Denver Health has a program, the TRT program. There are some options, and really it's about the dedication of the individual. If they are really ready and they jump through about a week and a half to 2 weeks worth of hoops, they can get into one of those treatment programs at low to no cost or using their Medicaid benefits.
We have time for one more question. We'll go right over here, up in the front row.
Okay, my son is a heroin addict.
Hold on real quick. We have microphone. Thanks.
My son is 22. He's a heroin addict. And we've been through West Pines. He's on Subutex. He's allergic to Narcan. He started out at church trading pot with his friends at church 6 years ago. So, we did all the things that you talked about. The codependency thing, one of our issues now is him in recovery or trying to get some help with the Medicaid, because we've searched through many different ways to get him help. Like you said, came out of West Pines, 2 weeks, give him Subutex. We now have 9 deaths from the overdose of heroin, fentanyl. These boys, I call them boys, are early 20s. In our group of friends, 9, we're in Jeffco. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm asking. Maybe it's a comment. Maybe we're in an emergency situation with these kids in these last few years. The codependency being, you're dead. You stop using the heroin. The kids think, oh, I can stop. They will stop a month, 2, 6 months, a year. They go back to the same dose they were using. They're overdosed, they're dead. So the codependency there is going to be different from maybe an alcoholic family. My family also, my parents, uncles, alcoholism there, but they lived. They lived for a long time. Some recovered, some didn't, some committed suicide because of it. They have PTSD problems. I don't know what I'm asking exactly, is that there's an emergency situation with these kids, not just the education in the schools, the lectures, they miss out. I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that? My son's roommate, he just didn't wake up one morning because he went back to the same dose he had been using. I think, Paul, I want to talk to you afterwards.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
It's very brave.
Thank you.
Can we give our speakers a round of applause?